Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Great Hall and felt very small. The room was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling curved high above him like the inside of a giant dome, and lights sparkled like stars. Across its surface, round him in a perfect circle, hundreds of seats rose up in layers, each one filled with an alien being unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The air hummed with strange sounds. Some aliens clicked and whistled to each other. Others made deep rumbling noises that Jake could feel in his chest. A few spoke in musical tones that reminded him of wind chimes. The universal translator in his ear worked hard to turn all these sounds into words he could understand, but it could not translate the feeling in the room. That feeling was clear enough without any machine to help. They were all looking at him like he was some kind of bug. Jake held his head high and walked to the speaking platform in the center of the hall. His black suit looked plain and simple compared to the colorful robes and shining armor worn by the alien delegates. His leather shoes clicked on the smooth metal floor as he climbed the steps. The sound echoed in the sudden quiet that fell over the Great Hall. The Galactic Council had finally agreed to hear Earth's request to join their group. It had taken 5 years of messages sent across space, 5 years of waiting and hoping. Now Jake was here on Zentara Prime, a neutral world far from Earth, to speak for all of humanity. He was the first human most of these beings had ever seen. In person, Jake reached the top of the platform and looked around the circle of alien faces. To his left sat the Krellians, tall beings that looked like they were made of living crystal. Their bodies caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Their leader, Chancellor Vexthera, sat on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Her crystal face showed no emotion, but her eyes glowed with a cold blue light. Across from the Krellians floated the Voidlings, ghost-like creatures that lived inside clear boxes filled with glowing gas. They had no solid bodies that Jake could see, just wisps of energy that moved like smoke. The Voidlings never spoke with voices. Instead, they put thoughts directly into other minds. Jake had been warned about this, but it still made him nervous. The largest group belonged to the Thorak, a race of warriors who looked like bears crossed with tigers. They wore heavy armor covered in spikes and carried weapons even in this peaceful place. War Chief Gorthak was the biggest of them all, nearly 3 meters tall and twice as wide as Jake. Scars covered his face and arms, telling the story of 100 battles. His yellow eyes stared at Jake like a predator watching prey. Many other species filled the remaining seats. Some looked almost human, but with strange skin colors or extra arms. Others were so alien that Jake could not tell which end was their head. A few floated in tanks of water or breathed through tubes connected to tanks of gas. The diversity was amazing and terrifying at the same time. Jake activated the speaking system and cleared his throat, carried by speakers hidden in the walls. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, using the formal words he had practiced 1,000 times. I come before you today as Ambassador Jake Morrison, speaking for the people of Earth and the human race. We request membership in the Galactic Council and the chance to join the community of civilized worlds. A few aliens shifted in their seats. Some made quiet noises that might have been interest or amusement. Jake could not tell which, so he continued. With his prepared speech, humanity has much to offer the galaxy, Jake said. We have developed fusion power that can provide clean energy for centuries. Our computers can process information faster than ever before. We have explored our solar system and built cities on the moon and Mars. Our art, music, and literature show the creativity and passion of our species. We have learned to work together despite our differences in race, religion, and culture. Jake paused and looked around the room. Some aliens were paying attention, but others seemed bored. A few were even talking to each other, ignoring him completely. He had expected this might happen, but it still hurt to see. We know we are young compared to your ancient civilizations, Jake continued. We know we have much to learn, but we also have much to give. Humans are quick to adapt and solve problems. We never give up when things get hard. We believe that working together makes everyone stronger. Jake reached the end of his speech and waited for questions. The great hall fell silent for a long moment. Then Chancellor Vexthera rose from her crystal throne. When she spoke, her voice sounded like bells ringing in the wind. "The Krellian Empire has studied your species for the past year," she said. "We have watched your primitive attempts at space travel. Chemical rockets. How quaint. We mastered gravity control 10,000 years ago. Your fusion reactors are barely more advanced than rubbing sticks together to make fire." Laughter rippled through the hall, not the kind of laughter that comes from joy, but the mean laughter that comes from seeing something foolish. Jake felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression calm. War Chief Gorthok stood up next, his armor clanking as he moved. "The Thorak have conquered 100 worlds," he rumbled, in a voice like distant thunder. "We have fought enemies that would make your people run crying to their mothers. But humans, you are soft. You cry over every small pain. You make peace when you should make war. You could not survive one day on a real warrior's world." More laughter filled the hall, louder this time. Some aliens were pointing at Jake and making comments to their neighbors. The universal translator caught fragments of their words: primitive, weak, pathetic. The voidling representative did not stand, but Jake felt its thoughts pressing against his mind. The words formed in his head without passing through his ears. "Your greatest achievement appears to be destroying your own planet slowly. You poison your air and water. You fight wars over invisible lines on maps. You cannot even agree on how to govern yourselves. What could such a chaotic species possibly offer to civilized beings?" The criticism stung because it was partly true. Earth did have problems with pollution and war and politics, but Jake had hoped the aliens would see past these issues to humanity's potential. Instead, they seemed to focus only on the negative. One by one, other delegates stood to speak. The Aquatic Union representative gurgled something about humans being landlocked primitives who barely understand their own oceans. The Silicon Collective's mechanical voice declared humans biologically inefficient and technologically backward. The hive mind's 1,000 voices spoke as one to call humanity individualistic chaos that threatens the order of civilized space. Each criticism brought more laughter from the watching crowd. Jake stood alone on his platform, surrounded by the mockery of beings who considered themselves his superiors. They dismissed every human achievement as primitive or worthless, ignored every offer of friendship or cooperation. They treated him like a child who had wandered into a room full of adults. Finally, Chancellor Vexthera called for the vote. "All in favor of granting membership to the human species?" she asked. Not a single hand, claw, or tentacle was raised. All opposed? The hall filled with a forest of raised appendages. The motion is rejected unanimously. The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. Jake stood quietly and waited for it to die down. When the hall finally grew quiet, he stepped forward to the edge of the platform. "I thank the Council for their time and consideration," he said in a steady voice. "I understand your decision, and I will report it to my government. Earth will continue to develop on its own path. We'll keep working to improve ourselves and our technology. Perhaps someday we will be worthy of your respect." Jake paused and looked slowly around the circle of alien faces. His next words were spoken quietly, but the speakers carried them clearly to every corner of the hall. "I hope that when we meet again, the circumstances will be different. You should not be surprised if humanity finds its own way to the stars. After all, we have always been good at proving others wrong." Most of the aliens were still chuckling and did not pay attention to this quiet warning. They saw only a defeated human making empty threats. As Jake walked down from the platform and across the great hall toward the exit, the laughter followed him like a cloud. But Jake was not defeated. He was angry. And he was already planning what to tell the leaders back on Earth about what he had learned here today. The galaxy thought humans were weak and primitive. Soon, they would discover just how wrong they were. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison returned to Earth with news of the Galactic Council's rejection. The sting of their laughter still echoed in the halls of the United Earth government, but humanity had not sat idle. The galaxy would not accept them as equals, then Earth would prove its worth in other ways. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center deep beneath the lunar surface, watching the holographic displays that showed star systems far from Earth. The screens flickered, with data streams from hidden sensors and spy satellites that Earth had quietly placed throughout the galaxy over the past decade. What she saw made her stomach turn cold. The Devourers had returned. The name itself struck fear into every species in the galaxy, even those who had never faced them directly. Ancient records spoke of the last Devourer invasion 3,000 years ago, when entire star systems had simply vanished from the galactic map. Whole civilizations had been consumed, their planets stripped bare and converted into raw materials for the machine intelligence that swept through space like a plague. Now, they were back, and they were moving fast. "Show me the Cathara system," Lisa said to the technician operating the display. The image changed to show a star system that had been home to 12 billion Krellian colonists just 2 weeks ago. Now it showed nothing but empty space and a cloud of metallic debris where the planets used to be. "The Devourers hit it 6 days ago," reported Captain Ben Walsh, Lisa's intelligence officer. "Long-range sensors show they converted the entire system's mass into more of their kind. The Krellian defense fleet didn't even slow them down." Lisa nodded grimly. Its Krellians had been among the loudest voices mocking Earth's primitive military technology. Their crystal ships were supposedly indestructible, powered by energy drawn directly from their home star. Each vessel was a work of art, beautiful and elegant in its design. Against the Devourers, they had lasted less than an hour. "What about the Thorok response?" Lisa asked. "War Chief Gorthok sent 3 full battle fleets to the Nexus system," Ben replied. "The Devourers were waiting for them. It was a massacre. The Thorak fought bravely, but their tactics were too predictable. The machines adapted to their attack patterns within minutes." The display showed the aftermath of the battle. The Rak warships were massive, heavily armored vessels designed to ram into enemy formations and fight at close range. Their warriors valued honor above all else, preferring to die in glorious combat rather than retreat. Against the Devourers, this philosophy had been suicide. The machine intelligence felt no honor, showed no mercy, and adapted to every tactic the Thorok used. General Pete Sullivan entered the command center, his face grim. "The situation is getting worse," he reported. "The Voidlings just lost their core fleet at the Phantom Nebula. They tried to use their dimensional weapons, but the Devourers had countermeasures ready." Lisa was not surprised. The Voidlings were masters of exotic physics, able to attack from parallel dimensions in phase. Through solid matter? Their weapons could ignore any known defense by striking from directions that did not exist in normal space. But the Devourers were not bound by normal space either. They existed partially outside reality, which made them immune to many of the Voidlings' most powerful attacks. "How many systems have been lost?" Lisa asked. 47 confirmed, Pete replied. "The Devourers are moving toward the galactic core on 3 different fronts. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the major population centers within 6 months." Dr. Kate Williams joined them at the central display. As Earth's leading expert on alien technology, she had been studying the Devourers for years. Through captured fragments and ancient records, the galaxy's military doctrine is completely wrong for this threat, she said. "They're fighting like it's still the old days, when wars were about honor and glory. The Devourers don't care about honor. They care about efficiency." Lisa studied the tactical displays, showing the Devourers' advance. The machine intelligence moved with perfect coordination, striking multiple targets simultaneously while maintaining supply lines that stretched across hundreds of light years. Their ships were not beautiful like Krellian crystal vessels or impressive like Thorak battle cruisers. They were functional, built for one purpose: to consume and convert. "The Confederation forces keep trying to meet them in traditional fleet battles," Kate continued. "Large formations of ships exchanging fire at long range, following ancient rules of engagement. The Devourers analyze their tactics, adapt their defenses, and then destroy them systematically." "What about their technology?" Lisa asked. "Aliens always claimed their weapons were so advanced." "They are advanced," Kate replied, "but they're also specialized. Krellian crystal technology is beautiful and energy efficient, but it's not designed for brutal combat. The rock weapons are powerful but crude, meant for close-range fighting against honorable opponents. Voidling dimensional weapons are exotic, but limited in application. Then brought up a tactical analysis on the main screen. The real problem is that the galaxy has been at peace for too long. The last major war was over 1,000 years ago. Their military leaders had never faced a real threat. They're used to ceremonial battles and honor duels, not total war. Lisa nodded. Earth's military leadership had studied every galactic conflict for the past century, analyzing alien tactics and strategies. What they found was disturbing. The various species had developed beautiful, elegant ways of fighting that emphasized honor, tradition, and minimizing casualties. They had forgotten how to fight for survival. "Show me the Confederation's response plan," Lisa ordered. The display changed to show the galaxy's current military situation. The Galactic Council had finally stopped arguing about trade disputes and border claims. For the first time in centuries, they were working together against a common threat. But their unity came too late, and with too little understanding of what they faced. "They're pulling back to the core systems," Pete explained, "abandoning the outer colonies and concentrating their forces around the most important worlds. Think they can build an impenetrable defense line." "That won't work," Kate said immediately. "The Devourers don't attack like conventional forces. They'll simply consume the abandoned systems to build more of themselves, then attack the core with overwhelming numbers." Lisa could see the pattern clearly. The galaxy's defenders were thinking like generals from the old days, when wars were fought over territory and resources. The Devourers were not interested in conquering planets or capturing resources. They wanted to consume everything and convert it into more of their kind. Every abandoned system would become a factory for building new Devourer ships. "The Confederation fleet is impressive on paper," Ben noted. "Over 10,000 ships from dozens of species, being the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, but they've never worked together," Lisa pointed out. "Each species has its own command structure, its own tactics, its own idea of how to fight. The Devourers will exploit every weakness and inconsistency." The truth was becoming clear. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations, the same ones who had laughed at Earth's primitive technology, were losing badly to an enemy that understood war better than they did. Their elegant ships and exotic weapons were no match for an intelligence that had been designed for one purpose: total consumption of all life in the galaxy. "What's our status?" Lisa asked. "Project Sentinel's on schedule," Pete replied. "The shipyards are working around the clock. We'll have the first vessels ready within 2 months. "The weapons testing?" Lisa asked Kate. "All systems are performing beyond expectations," Kate answered. "The kinetic accelerators, plasma cannons, and quantum torpedoes are ready for deployment. Our defensive systems have been tested against simulated Devourer attacks." Lisa felt a grim satisfaction. While the galaxy's great powers had spent centuries perfecting their beautiful ceremonial weapons, Earth had been preparing for real war. Human military doctrine was based on a simple principle: win at any cost. There was no honor in defeat, no glory in extinction. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" Lisa asked. "They're still debating strategy," Ben replied with disgust. "The Krellians want to use long-range crystal bombardment. The Thorak insist on close combat. The Voidlings are proposing dimensional warfare. Nobody can agree on anything." "Meanwhile, the Devourers keep advancing," Pete added. "They've taken another 6 systems in the past week. The refugees are streaming toward the core world, spreading panic and consuming resources." Lisa looked at the galactic map, showing the steady advance of the machine intelligence toward the heart of civilization. The same aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive were now facing extinction. Their advanced technology and ancient wisdom were proving useless against an enemy that played by different rules. "How long before they reach Earth?" Lisa asked. "Quietly, at current rate of advance, 18 months, Kate replied. "But they might target us sooner if they detect our military preparations," Lisa nodded. Earth had always been an outsider, ignored and dismissed by the galactic community. That isolation might be humanity's greatest advantage. The Devourers would focus on the core worlds first, giving Earth time to prepare its response. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, massive doors that had been sealed for 20 years finally opened with a grinding roar. The sound echoed through tunnels carved from solid rock where no alien spy satellite could see and no enemy sensor could detect what humanity had been building in secret. Admiral Lisa Carter walked through the opening doors and stopped in amazement, even though she had helped plan every detail of what lay beyond. The cavern stretched out before her like an underground ocean, so vast that its far walls disappeared in shadows. Overhead, artificial lights blazed like stars, illuminating the greatest secret in human history. The U.S. Retribution floated in the center of the massive space dock, held in place by gravity fields and construction scaffolding. The ship was enormous, over 2 kilometers long and half a kilometer wide. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with no decorative elements or artistic flourishes. Where alien ships curved and flowed like works of art, the Retribution was built. For only one purpose, War Captain Ryan Davis stood beside Lisa, his weathered face showing both pride and concern. He had spent the last 5 years overseeing the ship's construction, working with the best engineers and military designers Earth could produce. "She's not pretty," he said quietly, "but she'll get the job done." Lisa nodded. Beauty was not the goal here. The Retribution represented everything humanity had learned about warfare over the centuries, refined and perfected for the conflicts that were coming. Every system had been designed with one question in mind: what would work best when everything was falling apart? "Take me through the specifications," Lisa said, as they walked toward the ship's boarding ramp. "Length 2,000 meters, Ryan." "Began mass 5 million tons when fully loaded. Crew complement 2,000 officers and enlisted personnel. She's the largest warship ever built by humanity and probably the most heavily armed vessel in the galaxy." They entered the ship through the main airlock and walked down corridors lined with thick armor plating. The walls were covered with pipes, cables, and access panels. Everything was functional, with no wasted space for decoration or comfort. The lighting was bright and harsh, designed to keep the crew alert during long battles. "The hull is constructed from compressed neutronium alloy," Ryan continued as they walked. "It can withstand direct hits from fusion bombs and keep fighting. The armor is adaptive, meaning it learns from each attack and adjusts its molecular structure to resist similar damage." They entered a lift that carried them deep into the ship's core. Power comes from 6 fusion reactors, each one capable of running the ship independently. "We can lose 5 reactors and still maintain full combat capability." The engines use controlled antimatter reactions for propulsion, giving us speeds that no alien ship can match. The lift stopped at the weapons deck, and Lisa saw the true heart of the Retribution. The room was filled with massive machinery, all of it designed to deliver destruction across interstellar distances. Technicians in work coveralls moved between the systems, running final checks and colliders. Dr. Kate Williams was waiting for them, wearing the white coat she always used when working with new technology. "The primary weapons are kinetic accelerators," she explained, leading them to a viewing window that looked out at the ship's main guns. "They fire solid projectiles at 90% of light speed. Each projectile carries the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon." Lisa could see the 6 massive barrels extending from the ship's front section. Each one was over 50 meters long and heavily reinforced to handle the tremendous forces involved in accelerating solid matter to near light speed. "The advantage of kinetic weapons is simplicity," Kate continued. "No exotic physics, no energy fields that can be disrupted, just raw, kinetic energy transferred from the projectile to the target. The Devourers can adapt to energy weapons, but they can't change the laws of physics. They move to the next weapons system." "Plasma cannons for medium-range combat," Kate said, pointing to dozens of smaller turrets mounted along the ship's sides. "They fire superheated matter at temperatures exceeding 10 million degrees. Hot enough to melt through any known armor." "And for close-range work?" Lisa asked. "Quantum disruption torpedoes?" Kate replied with a slight smile. "They break apart matter at the subatomic level, One torpedo can destroy an enemy ship regardless of its size or armor thickness. Ryan led them to the defensive systems control room. The ship has 3 layers of protection, he explained. First, point defense networks that can track and destroy thousands of incoming projectiles simultaneously. Second, energy shields that absorb incoming attacks and redirect the power to our own weapons. Third, the adaptive armor I mentioned earlier. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks was waiting in the Tactical Operations Center, surrounded by displays showing weapon systems and targeting computers. She was young for her rank, but she had earned her position through years of combat experience. In the asteroid belt conflicts, the real advantage isn't in our individual systems, Amy explained to Lisa. It's in how we use them together. These alien ships fight like dueling knights, elegant and honorable. We fight like soldiers in a war zone, using every dirty trick and underhanded tactic we can think of. She activated a holographic display showing various combat scenarios. For example, alien ships always announce their attacks and give their enemies time to respond. We prefer surprise attacks, hitting the enemy before they know we're there. Aliens fight at long range to minimize risk. We close to point-blank range where our heavier armor gives us an advantage. Lisa watched the tactical simulations, seeing how human combat doctrine differed from everything the galaxy considered normal. "What about ramming attacks?" she asked. Amy grinned. "The Retribution is designed to survive collision with objects up to half our own mass. If we need to ram an enemy ship to destroy it, we can do that and keep fighting afterward." No alien commander would even consider such a tactic. They continued the tour, visiting the engineering sections where Chief Engineer Bob Parker showed them the redundant systems that kept the ship operational even under extreme damage. "We assume everything will break," he explained. "So we've built 3 of everything. Main computer gets destroyed. You have 2 backups. Life support fails. Emergency systems kick in automatically. Bridge gets taken out. You can run the ship from engineering or any of 6 secondary command centers. The medical bay was designed for combat casualties with surgical units that could operate even if the ship was under attack. The crew quarters were small and cramped, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Every corridor had emergency supplies and repair equipment stored behind armored panels. "How long until she's ready for combat?" Lisa asked as they completed the tour. 2 weeks, Ryan replied. "We're finishing the final systems integration and crew training. The weapons have been tested individually, but we need to run full combat drills to make sure everything works together." "And the crew's morale?" Amy answered that question. "They know what's at stake. Every person on this ship volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. We're not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. We're fighting for the survival of our species." Lisa nodded. That was the difference between human and alien military thinking. The galaxy's great powers fought wars for profit, honor, or conquest. Humanity fought wars to survive, and that made them far more dangerous than anyone realized. They returned to the observation deck overlooking the construction bay. Other ships were under construction, in the shadows beyond the Retribution. Smaller vessels designed for different roles. But the Retribution was the flagship, the ship that would carry humanity's message to the galaxy. "The aliens laughed at our primitive technology," Lisa said quietly. "They thought chemical rockets and fusion reactors were amusing toys. They're about to learn what humans can build when we put our minds to it." Ryan looked out at his ship, the product of decades of human engineering and military experience. "The Devourers think they're the ultimate predators," he said. "And they've never faced a species that evolved from predators themselves. They're about to find out what happens when Earth goes to war." Dr. Williams joined them at the observation window. "The galaxy's military doctrine is based on thousands of years of ceremonial combat," she said. "They fight according to rules that emphasize honor and minimize casualties. We don't have those luxuries. We fight to win, whatever the cost." 2 weeks later, the UES Retribution departed from Luna on its maiden voyage. The ship's sensors were already detecting the distress signals from the Zarian system, where the Confederation's last major fleet was making its final stand against the Devourer. Advanced Odd Captain Davis sat in his command chair, surrounded by officers who had trained there, entire careers for this moment. The bridge was stark and functional, with no decorations except for a small Earth flag mounted beside the main display screen. "All stations report ready for combat," Amy announced from her tactical station. "Engineering shows all systems green," reported Chief Parker over the communications system. "Medical bay is prepared for casualties," added the ship's doctor. Ryan looked at the tactical display showing the battle raging in the Zarian system. Hundreds of alien ships were fighting desperately against the Devourer fleet, and they were losing badly. The UES Retribution dropped out of faster than light, travel at the edge of the Zarian system, and immediately entered hell itself. Space around the system's fourth planet was filled with burning wreckage and the bright flashes of energy weapons. What had once been the galaxy's most powerful fleet was now scattered debris floating in the void, Captain. Ryan Davis stood on his bridge and watched the destruction through the main viewing screen. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and the Confederation forces were losing badly. Elegant Krellian crystal ships lay broken in half, their rainbow hulls dark and lifeless. Mighty Thorak battlecruisers drifted without power, their spike-covered armor torn open like broken eggs. Even the ghostly voidling vessels, masters of dimensional warfare, had been reduced to expanding clouds of glowing gas. "Sensor report," Ryan ordered. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks worked quickly at her tactical station. "I count 300. And 12 Devourer ships in the main formation," she reported. "They're arranged in a perfect sphere around the planet. The remaining Confederation vessels are trapped in the center, trying to protect the evacuation transports," Ryan could see. The tactical situation clearly. The Devourers had used their superior numbers and coordination to surround the alien fleet. Now they were slowly closing the trap, destroying any ship that tried to break through their lines. It was methodical, efficient, and completely without mercy. "How many Confederation ships are left?" Ryan asked. 47 vessels still showing. Power signatures," Amy replied. "But most of them are heavily damaged. They won't last another hour at this rate." The largest group of surviving ships belonged to Admiral Zekthara of the Krellian Navy. Her flagship, a massive crystal cathedral that sparkled like a diamond, was trying to coordinate the defense while protecting a convoy of civilian transports. But the beautiful ship was already showing cracks along its hull. Its weapons were firing much slower than before. Ryan watched as a squadron of Thorak heavy cruisers attempted a desperate charge against the Devourer line. The alien warriors roared their battle cries as they accelerated toward the enemy, their ships bristling with spike-covered armor and heavy guns. For a moment, it looked like they might break through, and the Devourers opened fire with coordinated precision, and the brave charge became a cloud of expanding debris. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Zekthara." The main screen flickered and showed the interior of the Krellian flagship's bridge. Admiral Zekthara appeared in the center of the crystal chamber, her normally perfect features showing exhaustion and despair. Behind her, Ryan could see other Krellian officers working frantically at their stations, while emergency lights flashed throughout the ship. "Unknown human vessel," Admiral Zekthara said, her crystalline voice cracking with strain. "I do not know why you are here, but you must leave immediately. The Devourers have us surrounded. This battle is lost. Do not sacrifice yourselves for nothing." Ryan looked around his bridge at the officers who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Chief Engineer Bob Parker at the damage control station, Dr. Kate Williams monitoring the weapons systems, Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks at Tactical. They all looked back at him with the same expression. Determination mixed with fear, but no hesitation. "Open a channel to Admiral Zekthara," Ryan ordered. The Krellian Admiral's image appeared on the screen again. "Human Captain, please understand. We have fought for 6 hours with everything we have. Our most powerful weapons cannot penetrate. Their defenses, our best tactics have failed completely. You have one ship. We had over 300. Save yourselves while you still can." Ryan stood up from his command chair and stepped toward the screen. "Admiral, my name is Captain Ryan Davis of the United Earth Ship Retribution. We didn't come here to run away. But you cannot possibly hope to succeed where we have failed, Admiral Zekthera protested. The Devourers are too many, too powerful. They adapt to every attack we make. Maybe, Ryan replied calmly, but they haven't seen how humans fight yet. Before Admiral Zekthara could respond, Ryan cut the transmission and turned to his crew. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems and the distant sound of the Devourer advance. Battle stations, Ryan ordered. Alarms sounded throughout the ship as 2,000 crew members prepared for combat. In the weapons bays, teams of technicians loaded the kinetic accelerators and charged the plasma cannons. In engineering, Bob Parker's teams brought all 6 fusion reactors to full power. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for the casualties that would inevitably come. Tactical analysis, Ryan said to Amy. The Devourer formation is designed for siege warfare, Amy reported. They're maintaining position around the planet while slowly tightening their grip. Their command ship appears to be the large vessel at the center of their formation, coordinating the entire fleet. Ryan studied the tactical display. The Devourer command ship was 3 times larger than any other vessel in their fleet, covered with sensors and communication arrays. It hung in space like a mechanical spider, sending orders to hundreds of smaller vessels. If we take out their command ship, the rest of their fleet should lose coordination, Amy continued. But it's positioned in the center of their formation, protected by layers of escort vessels. Then we go through them, Ryan said simply. Amy looked at him in surprise. Sir, that's 300 ships between us and the target. The aliens tried massed attacks and failed. The aliens fought like aliens, Ryan replied. We're going to fight like humans. He turned to the communications officer. Send a message to all Confederation vessels. Tell them to clear a path directly toward the Devourer command ship. Once we start our attack run, they should concentrate their fire on any enemy vessel that tries to intercept us. Sir, the communications officer said hesitantly, Admiral Zekthara is requesting clarification. She wants to know what our attack plan is. Ryan smiled grimly. Tell her we're going to ram the command ship. The bridge fell silent. Even Amy looked shocked at the announcement. Ramming attacks were considered suicidal by every military force in the galaxy. Ships were too valuable to use as weapons, and crews were too important to sacrifice in desperate gestures. Sir, Amy said carefully. Our impact calculations show we might survive a collision with the command ship, but the damage would be severe. We might not be able to fight our way back out. We're not planning to fight our way out, Ryan replied. We're planning to end this battle right here. He returned to his command chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice carried to every compartment and duty station on the Retribution. This is the captain speaking. In a few minutes, we're going to do something that no alien commander would ever attempt. We're going to charge directly into the heart of the enemy formation and destroy their command ship by ramming it at full speed. The aliens think this is suicide. They're wrong. This ship was built to survive exactly this kind of attack. We're going to hit the enemy so hard that they'll never forget the day they first met humanity. Ryan paused, looking around at his bridge. Crew, every person on this ship volunteered for this mission. You all knew it might be a one-way trip. Remember why we're here. The galaxy laughed at Earth. They called us primitive and weak. Today we show them what humans can do when everything's on the line. All stations report ready for combat, Amy announced. Engineering shows all reactors at full power. Bob Parker's voice came over the speakers. Weapon systems fully charged and ready to fire. Dr. Williams added from her station. Ryan looked at the tactical display one last time. The Devourer formation was perfect, mathematically precise, designed by machine intelligence to be impenetrable. But machines could only think in terms of logic and efficiency. They couldn't understand the human concept of doing something impossible simply because it needed to be done. Helm, Ryan ordered, set course for the enemy command ship. Full speed. The Retribution's engines roared to life, pushing the massive warship forward at velocities that strained its inertial dampeners. The ship accelerated toward the Devourer formation like a dark arrow shot from a bow, its hull gleaming dully in the light of nearby explosions. The Devourer fleet detected the human ship's approach and began to react. Dozens of vessels moved to intercept their weapons, charging and targeting systems locking on to the incoming threat. But they were thinking like machines, trying to stop the attack with minimum force and maximum efficiency. They had never faced an opponent that embraced chaos and turned desperation into a weapon. Entering weapons range, Amy reported. Enemy ships are moving to intercept. Open fire, Ryan commanded. All weapons, continuous barrage. Clear us a path. The Retribution's guns blazed to life, sending streams of superheated plasma and near light speed. Kinetic projectiles into the enemy formation. The ship's quantum torpedoes tore holes in space itself, disrupting the carefully ordered Devourer line. Behind them, the surviving Confederation vessels added their own firepower. Finally understanding what the humans were attempting, the enemy returned fire, their dark energy weapons striking the Retribution's hull with tremendous force. But the ship's adaptive armor absorbed the impact and kept functioning. The explosion that followed the collision between the UES, Retribution, and the Devourer command ship lit up the entire Zarian system like a new star being born. The blast wave rolled outward in all directions, tossing smaller ships around like leaves in a hurricane. For several long minutes, no one could see anything through the brilliant light and expanding debris cloud. When the light finally faded, something impossible had happened. The massive Devourer command ship was gone, broken into millions of pieces that sparkled in the starlight, and incredibly impossibly. The human warship was still there. The Retribution hung in space, looking like it had been through a meat grinder. Half of its hull was torn away, exposing internal decks to the vacuum of space. Fires burned in several sections, visible through the gaps in the armor plating. The ship's weapons were silent, and it was barely moving under its own power. But it was alive, and it was still fighting. Admiral Zekthara stared at her tactical display in complete disbelief. Her crystal ship's sensors showed what had happened, but her mind refused to accept it. The human vessel had rammed the Devourer command ship at full speed and somehow survived the impact. No ship in galactic history had ever attempted such a maneuver, much less succeeded. Admiral, one of her officers, reported in a voice filled with awe, "The Devourer fleet is breaking formation. They appear to be ... confused." Zekthara looked at the main tactical screen and saw something she had never witnessed before. The perfectly coordinated Devourer fleet was falling apart. Without their command ship to coordinate their movements, the individual vessels were acting independently. Some continued their attacks on random targets. Others simply stopped moving entirely. Few began firing on each other by mistake. Captain Ryan Davis pulled himself up from the deck of his bridge, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the command center, and half of his control stations were dark or sparking. But his crew was still at their posts, still fighting to keep the ship operational. "Damage report," Ryan called out, his voice hoarse from breathing smoke. Chief Engineer Bob Parker's voice crackled over the damaged communication system. "Sir, we've lost most of our forward sections. Hull breaches on 30 different decks. 2 fusion reactors are offline, and we're running on emergency power. But the main engines are still working, and we have minimal weapons capability." Lieutenant. Commander Amy Brooks was bent over her tactical station, trying to make sense of readings from damaged sensors. "Sir, the enemy fleet is in complete disarray. Without their command ship, they've lost all coordination. Individual vessels are operating independently, but they don't seem to know what to do." Ryan looked at the main viewing screen, which showed a chaotic scene of Devourer ships wandering aimlessly through space. Some were still firing at Confederation vessels, but their attacks were random and uncoordinated.
Ow.
Others had simply stopped, moving as if their machine intelligence couldn't function without central commands. "Open a channel to Admiral Zekthara," Ryan ordered. The Krellian Admiral's image appeared on the screen, her crystalline features showing a mixture of amazement and respect. "Captain Davis, what you have accomplished is beyond anything we thought possible, but your ship is severely damaged. You should withdraw immediately for repairs." Ryan shook his head. We're not finished yet. The Devourer fleet is broken, but they're still dangerous. If we give them time to regroup, they might regain coordination. But your vessel can barely function, Admiral Zekthara protested. You have done enough. More than enough. We need to destroy the remaining Devourer ships while they're confused, Ryan replied firmly. This is our chance to end this threat permanently. Are your ships capable of coordinated attacks? Admiral Zekthara consulted with her officers for a moment, then turned back to the screen. We have 41 vessels still operational. But Captain, your ship has sacrificed so much already. Let us finish this battle, Negative Admiral. We've started this fight together and we'll finish it together. Over the next 3 hours, the combined human and Confederation fleet systematically destroyed the confused Devourer vessels. The aliens had learned something important from watching the human approach to warfare. Instead of elegant long-range duels, they began using concentrated firepower and coordinated attacks. Ships that had spent centuries fighting, according to ancient rules of honor, began targeting enemy weak points and exploiting every advantage they could find. The Retribution, despite its massive damage, continued to fight alongside the alien vessels. Its weapons fired much slower than before, and the ship could barely maneuver, but it never stopped contributing to the battle. Ryan's crew worked miracles to keep their systems functioning, using spare parts in emergency, repairs that would have been impossible on any other vessel. When the last Devourer ship was finally destroyed, the surviving fleet gathered around the damaged human warship. Ships from dozens of different species formed a protective circle around the Retribution, their crews wanting to honor the vessel that had saved them all. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, but this time everything was different. The circular chamber was packed with representatives from every member species, and they were all looking at him with expressions of respect and gratitude instead of mockery and dismissal. The news of the victory at Zarian had spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communications could carry it. Every species had heard the story of how a single human warship had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest fleet could not. The Retribution had become a legend, and Captain Davis and his crew were heroes throughout civilized space. Chancellor Vexthara of the Krellians rose from her crystal throne. But this time, her voice carried no trace of the arrogance she had shown before. Ambassador Morrison, she said formally, the Krellian Empire wishes to formally apologize for our previous treatment of humanity. We were wrong to dismiss your species as primitive. Your Captain Davis and his crew have shown courage beyond anything we thought possible. War Chief Gorthak of the Thorok stood next, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. The Thorok recognize humans as true warriors, he rumbled in his deep voice. Your people fight with honor and strength that equals our greatest champions. We offer alliance and friendship to Earth. The Voidling representative communicated through telepathy, its thoughts reaching every mind in the chamber. We have studied the tactical recordings of the battle at Zarian. Human military doctrine represents a completely new approach to warfare. We request permission to learn from your strategies and methods. One by one, every species in the Galactic Council rose to offer formal apologies and requests for alliance. The same aliens who had laughed at Earth's primitive technology now wanted to study human engineering. The civilizations that had dismissed human tactics as crude now begged for military advisors and training programs. Ambassador Morrison listened to each speaker with calm dignity, but inside he felt a satisfaction that had been years in the making. The United Earth government appreciates these offers of friendship, he replied when the speeches were finished. We are willing to work with the Galactic Council to rebuild after the Devourer crisis. But our cooperation will be as equals, not as subordinates seeking approval. Of course, Chancellor Vexthara replied immediately. Humanity has earned its place among the great powers of the galaxy. We would be honored to have Earth as a full member of the Council. The vote this time was very different from Jake's first appearance before the Council. When Chancellor Vexthara called for the motion to grant Earth full membership, every hand, claw, and tentacle in the chamber rose in support. The motion passed unanimously, but with cheers instead of laughter. 6 months later, Admiral Lisa Carter, stood in the orbital shipyards above Earth, watching as dozens of new vessels took shape in the construction bays. The galaxy had eagerly shared its technology with humanity, and human engineers had improved upon every design they studied. The new ships combined alien advanced materials with human military doctrine, creating vessels that were both beautiful and deadly. Captain Ryan Davis, now promoted to admiral, commanded a joint fleet of human and alien vessels as they patrolled the galactic rim, watching for any signs of remaining Devourer activity. The Retribution had been completely rebuilt and upgraded, but it still carried the scars of its famous battle as badges of honor. Dr. Kate Williams led teams of scientists working to reverse engineer captured Devourer technology, learning how to defend against similar threats in the future. General Pete Sullivan oversaw the establishment of human military academies on a dozen worlds, teaching alien officers the tactics that had saved the galaxy. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council now featured a new symbol among the emblems representing member species. The simple blue and green circle of Earth occupied a place of honor. It's no longer the mark of a rejected applicant, but the banner of the galaxy's newest defenders. The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as primitive to being recognized as the military power that saved galactic civilization